This podcast is brought to you by State Champs. State Champs is running a special giveaway right now for every purchase from statechampsco.com, their online shop, between February 7th and April 7th, enters you to win 2 tickets to She Believes Cup in Columbus, Ohio this April. Be sure to follow along at This is State Champs to learn more and visit them at statechampsco.com.
How lucky they are to witness this greatness, to learn about the legends of the past through the legends of tomorrow. How lucky they are to see what we have always known. March is madness for all. How lucky they are. Welcome to Across the Pond Women's College Basketball. I'm Stacia Whitaker.
And I'm Aubrey Knight.
Oh my goodness. We are so sorry we couldn't come bring you this episode before the Final Four started, but, life gets in the way. But we've got so much to talk about and all these exceptional basketball games that are going on. Aubrey got to go to a regional. It didn't go her way, but, we're going to get to that. But, it went to the way of the country, I think, mostly, except for a small handful. Sorry about that. I had to throw that in there. Yeah. All right, so we are starting in South Carolina's region like we have done this kind of like whole postseason. South Carolina played Indiana and gets up and has a big lead, 20-point lead. And then after the game, they said, yeah, we're good. Raven Johnson, yeah, we're good in the post. We're good on this. Yeah, you can't guard us. And then Dawn Staley kind of laughed and said, you blew a 17, 20-point lead. And Indiana made it a game. Congrats for them coming back. They're within 2 points in like the last minute, I believe. And South Carolina does pull it out, 79-75. But I love this turnaround for Indiana after not fulfilling their potential last year. I feel like they fulfilled it as much as they could. You never know. They could have gotten the game, but South Carolina.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was the closest game South Carolina has really had in this tournament so far. And Indiana was close, but South Carolina is just such a good team. They're not letting anyone beat them right now. It's crazy.
They've only let 3 teams beat them in the past 3 years. So
which is insane.
100, I think it's like 108-3 is what I believe the record has been. So yeah. It's crazy. But South Carolina prevails. Good job to Indiana. After being on the Indiana train for so long this year, I'm so happy that they made that a game. It makes me proud to say how much I backed them. If they would have pulled it off, I think I would have felt like they'd been like, I like Indiana. That would have been interesting if they would have pulled it off. But it's South Carolina. And But on to the bottom part of that bracket. We have Oregon State, Pac-12, and Notre Dame in one of the biggest controversies of the year that had nothing to do with actual plays. Hannah Hidalgo at the start of the second quarter has to get her nose ring taken out. And I did a little bit of research on this. There's 3 officials in that game. 2 of them have reffed Hannah Hidalgo before. One had reffed Hannah Hidalgo in one game at the beginning of the season, and then another ref had reffed her 4 other times. And I looked up 3 of those games. Her nose ring was in for 3 of those games. I could look up the other ones, and I could say the same, that I'm sure her nose ring was in for those games. Legally, that is the correct call, to not have any jewelry in. And so I don't fault having that happen. I do fault if you've reffed her before and never made it happen. And I do fault not making it super emphasized at the start of the coaches meeting in the beginning of the game to be like, let's get that out of here. So this is where I have trouble.
Yeah, it's just the consistency of it, right? Obviously the rules are you're not allowed to have any jewelry in. You're allowed to have the clear earrings, which a lot of people put in, to make it so that the hole doesn't close during the season, but you're not allowed to have jewelry in like that. That's the rule of the game. But people have been doing it and people do it, which whatever, they haven't gotten in trouble for it. Obviously it's the rules, but if you're doing it all season, why would you think that anything's going to change? And of course it's the biggest stage of the year, but you've also reffed other games, and I guarantee you reffed other players who have it in. So why now are you saying something? It's just,
why?
And they're making a big deal out of it, right?
Yeah. And one of those games where she did have her nose ring in was NC State at the ACC final. So that's a big game. So when people say, "Oh, this is a big game," they're trying to do that. ACC final is a big game. They played
Yeah.
UConn this year. That was a big game. She had it in. And so I want to, and I think people, I have officiated and I've umpired softball for over 2 decades. And it's incredibly frustrating. And I've played, I've coached. It's incredibly frustrating when you don't know what is allowed and when. And that's where everybody has to be better. Um,
Mm.
they just have to be better when it comes to that. I mean, the word that you said, that's all it is consistency. Because if we know what's happening, then we can adjust accordingly. But if we
Yeah,
don't, then how are we supposed to respond?
exactly.
Yeah, you get
So
mad.
hopefully
That's
next
that's the
season.
response. I'm gonna get mad. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, hopefully this next season they can be more consistent with it and
yeah,
just make it known at the beginning of at the beginning of the year, and
yeah,
then no one will wear it. That's the thing. Like then it will get on these big stages, and no one will be wearing it because it was told to them at the beginning of the season. But when
yeah.
you do something all season, it's not really your fault that
No.
that you got told that you can't wear this when you've done it all season. So
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing is consistency. So they just need to get better with that, as you said.
Well, we're gonna get into the game now. So Oregon
Yeah.
State versus Notre Dame was an interesting one. I flipped my pick and thought Notre Dame was gonna beat Oregon State when I originally said Oregon State. I was wrong. Oregon State wins this game despite having, I mean, I felt like it was about a million turnovers. Like that's what I felt like it was. They win 70-65. It was 26 turnovers, two of which were just crossing half court when they weren't even getting super pressured. Um, but despite that, Oregon State still wins because despite the turnovers, had a very good pace and kind of controlled the tempo when they weren't handing Notre Dame the ball.
Yeah.
Go Beavs.
Yeah. I mean, they played a great game. Yeah, turnovers so frustrating, but when it came down to it, Oregon State, I mean, like we had said before, they peaked at the right moments of the season and they showed it in that game. Obviously, you know, their season didn't then they had to go against, a very good team and South Carolina. So that kind of ended their season there, as we will get to. But Oregon State, I mean, back the pack all the way. They played great and they showed they deserve to be there.
I'm just from going 10th, picked 10th in your conference to making an Elite Eight to not being in the tournament last year and having a shot against South Carolina. They were in it because South Carolina hasn't closed as well. And I know it ended up 70-58, but they were in it. Uh, and
Yeah,
it wasn't done for a while. It was just excellent on their part, and I've really enjoyed watching that team. And so it just stinks that they're not going to be in a power conference next year. And as we've known, and we are going to get to on our episode next week, transfer portal is going to be huge for Oregon State because they're not in a power conference. So you're not going to have as big of opportunities for advancement in your career if you're not playing as good at teams or in the tournament. And Talia von
yeah,
Alhoffen has already entered the transfer portal. So, and they talked about that because they know that you got to make the best of your situation while you're there because you only get 4 years now. Besides the seniors, last year of the COVID seniors, you got
hmm
to make the most of your time. So it stinks because it'd be nice to see what this team does next year. But if they're not playing against teams up to their level, go where you can have a bigger impact with your team. I
yeah,
guess I am either way on this because I just like this team, but that's what's going to happen.
yeah. I agree. I mean, it's hard when you go from a Power Five conference and that's what you commit to, right? A lot of that's where you think that you're going, and a lot of people go to the Power Five schools because, like you said, it's the biggest stages. You get to play against the best players in the country, and you get like a lot of the perks of going to a bigger school in a bigger conference. And it's also a big accomplishment for you, right? You work so hard throughout your entire like high school, even before that, to get to this conference, and then you get there, and then they're leaving to a different conference. So I mean, I don't think anyone can be blamed for transferring, especially in the Pac-12 with all of the moving around that's going to be going on,
Whew,
which we will
yep.
get to. Hopefully, we'll get to that next week. But yeah, it's a bummer to see the Pac-12 kind of dissolve, and especially a school like Oregon State go to a different conference, and it's definitely going to change the athletic department.
It's yeah, it just stinks. I mean, I wish I could have a better, more articulate way of saying that. But it just stinks, and we've said that all year. It's not fun. But yeah, Oregon State, right with South Carolina, had a third quarter where they just kind of got outscored by 8. Other than that, you take away, of course, it's always one quarter. You take that away, they lose by 4. So it's 8 points, and it's just they dipped a little bit, and South Carolina, but I mean, they only scored 58 points. That's South Carolina's bread and butter. So we'll see
Yeah.
on how it happens later today, because we're recording this on Championship Sunday. But
Yes.
South Carolina makes it to the Final Four, and then, uh, like we predicted they were going to. And here we go, going to the Texas region, which you picked Gonzaga to beat Texas, and that was
I
just an embarrassing game. In one of those games where I was like, I think I can go into this game and maybe score if I got open, because Gonzaga couldn't make anything at all the
Yeah.
whole game. That's what it was. And when I say that, that is so sarcastic. There's no way this 5'4" chubby girl could ever score in any games, but that's what it felt like.
Yeah, I mean, definitely wasn't the game that Gonzaga has played all year. I mean, they shot 26% from the field, and they only
Ye
scored
ye
47 points. That's not Gonzaga. So, I
I
mean,
mean, yeah,
yeah,
and they had a
it was
closer three-point line for half the game.
yeah, because they had the wrong
Oh,
measurements. But maybe that could have been part of it. I mean, I'm not gonna, say anything, but when you go on a court and you're used to shooting from a certain distance and you're expecting that this is the same distance that you've been shooting on and then it's shorter, that can mess you up
it's
without
it's
even
just
knowing it.
yeah, it's just visually every something feels off.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah,
then, you start the game like that. You're already in your head a little bit, and obviously Gonzaga's shots weren't hitting, and there's obviously other things you can blame for that, but at the end of the day, Gonzaga just didn't play a good game, and Texas played a better game, and they won. That's just kind of how it is. So,
yeah. I have a comparison on that one. The only comparison I can come up with, um, but the court measurements were correct, was I played at, junior college nationals in tennis. We went to
mhm.
Arizona, and they had singles courts, so they don't have the doubles alleys.
Okay,
And I had to play on one because there's a few of them on this thing. It's a single court. That is so trippy, even though the court is the same, but those alleys visually aren't there. Nothing had
yeah,
changed. And I was just like, "I hate this." It took me a set to get into it. And I lost the first set and I shouldn't have, and then I won the next 2, but I was like, "What?" And it's one of those, mentally, as you said, visually, something's off, and so you just don't feel well. Um, yeah, it was I never wanna see a court with no doubles alleys ever again. It just, past trauma. Get it away from
yeah,
me. Stay away.
yeah.
Um, so Texas wins that easily, bottom half of the bracket. I feel like we are just pathetic in the fact that we did not pick NC State at all. We both
I
picked
know.
Tennessee to beat NC State on their home court, and then we both picked Stanford, even though Stanford barely won against Iowa State in overtime. And then NC State just comes out and just beats up on Stanford, outscoring them 25 to 6, or sorry, outscoring them in the third quarter 28-10 to grab the lead, and then just ran
Mhm.
with it. And then Stanford was done after that. I mean, Cam fouls out for the second game in a row, ends their career that way. It just, that third quarter, I was just watching, just being like, "It somebody stop somebody." And Isaiah James went off. Sanaya Rivers had, like, their games in that Sweet 16 Elite Eight were just magnificent for NC State.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did not see NC State pulling that out. So it proved me wrong, that's for sure. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, Stanford, that third quarter killed them. And the third quarter could be one of the most pivotal quarters of the entire game. And I mean, also saw it in South Carolina, which we'll talk about after. But yeah, I mean, Stanford just didn't have an answer for NC State. Came down to turnovers. They had 14 turnovers. It's tough. in a game like this, and NC State just took control, which surprised me because I thought Stanford was going to be able to, especially with just the experience that Stanford has. But NC State proved them wrong. So proved me wrong, I should say.
I think they proved a lot of people wrong. And so Isaiah James and Sanaya Rivers just, did well. Isaiah James had herself just a great tournament. I oh my gosh, I really loved watching her play. The 3-point line was not a problem for her anywhere
No,
at all. She was just
really not.
hitting everything, and that 29 points in that Stanford game, they were just very fun to watch. And I mean, 2 years ago, I was rooting for them to beat UConn to make it to the Final Four in Minneapolis because I'd only seen them play once, and I was just excited to. I was excited to see Paige if UConn made it, which they did. But I was excited to see someone different in the Final Four. If they would have beaten UConn. And so the fact that they made it this year, after not making it since 1998, good for Wes Moore. I really like him. And let's just say there's never been a time ever in men's and women's college basketball where two teams on the men's and women's side have each made the Final Four.
Yeah,
it didn't go well for three of those teams. You can get into that. But one's still hanging in there on the men's side. But we've seen multiple teams. There's been multiple schools that have had men's and women's in the Final Four, which is outstanding accomplishment. But way to go, NC State, because I don't think too many people picked the women, and no one really picked the men. So good on them. Yeah. So speaking of NC State, that game against Texas to make it to the Final Four was just. It started off with the teams realizing that the court was off, and so the men deciding to play. The coaches deciding to play. We're there. We're going to do this. There's a part of me that wished they didn't, just to have the level of to be equal for both teams within the NCAA. Because I feel like this is just another way that the NCAA just thinks that women are just like secondary to the men. That this didn't get fixed, especially after the weight room a couple of years ago. And we've clearly known that is not true when it comes to ratings this year. Mm-hmm. And so it's very upsetting to me. I wish they would have done something where they would have made the NCAA lose money. And a part of me wants them to file some kind of like discrimination suit against the NCAA, because this is another form of discrimination if your courts are messed up, because I've never heard of this in the men's game happening. But here we are again, talking about how the NCAA is failing women.
Yeah, it's pretty insane that you would have the 3-point line in the wrong spot. It's really not. It shouldn't be that difficult to make a court the right measurements. You're making the court, right? So it's like, I just don't understand. But NC State didn't really seem to care. They shot 50% from the 3-point line. So I guess
both
NC
sides.
State, it worked out for them.
But It really did. Texas's defense I thought was good this whole tournament, and then NC State came out in the first half and put up 43 on Texas, which Gonzaga put up 47 before. So I was like, Texas, what's going on, girls? That's what I would have been like, girls, what's going on? Isaiah James is what's going on.
Yep.
Whew. Yep. Well, NC State does that, ends up getting a 10-point win against Texas, makes it to their second ever Final Four, and Vic Schaefer is just kind of like left at Texas again in Elite Eight. He's gone to a lot. He hasn't gone to a Final Four with Texas. I think next year they're going to do it, is my bet. Roy Harmon will be back. Booker can not be a point guard and move to a more natural position. I look forward to seeing Texas play next year on the TV, because I won't get to see them in person because they're going to the SEC. So on that, but oh, well, way to go, SEC. Your conference just got better. Not better at all about these conference shifting. Not better, but hey, I get Colorado in my conference next year, so I'm happy about that. And still waiting to go to Colorado's region. So NC State surprises people. So we have a 1 seed and a 3 seed on that side of the bracket. Surprise, surprise, we get a 1 and 3 seed on the other side of the bracket as well. USC, they play Baylor in the Sweet 16, and you have liked Baylor this postseason. Baylor had a great game against USC. And my mom, who is not a super like Baylor fan, has switched over to Baylor. I think she switched last year where she's like, I like this team. I like him. And so she was just like watching them and just ready to go. USC sneaks out that game 74-70 on the back of a freshman who is just continuously setting records. Good old Juju, 30 points. Did not have a good shooting night, but was 12 of 13 from the free throw line and 8 of 28 from the floor. But Baylor, excellent game. Just didn't have enough at the end. USC outscores Baylor by 8 in the fourth quarter to win by 4. So Baylor had a shot. Baylor had a shot. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, USC has proven themselves this year, especially with, Juju doing what she does. But, I mean, I don't think anyone at the beginning of the season would have expected USC to have gone this far in the tournament. And just to show that they have come together as a team is honestly amazing. And I thought that Baylor had a great season too. I mean, this game was down to the wire. And like you said, SC just got it out at the end and just played a better fourth quarter, and Baylor just couldn't keep up with them.
I mean, that's about it. But I mean, Baylor started off the year great, dipped hard after they lost to Kansas for their first game, their first loss of the year, and then started to
Yeah.
come up again, and then had like a little dip at the Big 12 tournament, losing to Iowa State, but had a
Mhm.
great, you win 2 games and you get to the Sweet 16. Nikki Collins' first time getting to the Sweet 16 with Baylor, and then almost knock off a 1 seed and a freshman phenom. Kudos, good for you, Bears.
Yeah.
Um, Bottom half of the bracket, Duke and Kara Lawson going up against UConn. This is not a fun game to watch, considering that they didn't even score 100 points combined.
Yeah.
Ugh. But it was competitive. Not fun, but competitive.
Yeah. That's a crazy low scoring game. The fact that Duke only scored 45 points and UConn only scored 53. I don't think I've seen that low of a scoring game in a while. That's yeah. I don't know. They just weren't scoring. Had good defense on both ends. I mean, it was definitely a competitive game. As you can see, it was a close game, but it wasn't the most entertaining to watch.
Chennai at halftime was just like, I don't even know what's happening with Duke. They don't have a chance. They've only scored 13 points. This is not
Yeah.
gonna like and then UConn let him back in. At the end of the game, Duke got right there and like I think they were down by oh gosh, I want to say it was 5, down by 5 with about a minute and a half left. So Duke got back in it. They just didn't have consistent scoring like they did against Ohio State when they came back and just took control of it. But also, I think that Paige was just kind of she didn't shoot superbly well, but she was just on and controlling the game, and it was just great. It was just great control for UConn and good season for Duke. I hope Kara Lawson will stay at Duke, considering that there's now a vacancy at Tennessee, and I think that someone would be smart to try to get her away from Duke. But I want her to stay at Duke, and that's a conversation for next week. But I'm just dipping my toe in to throw that out there. And Duke's got a really good recruiting class next year. They've got like it's Fournier that can dunk easily. So I'm looking forward to that. I feel like Duke is going to be able to handle hard even better next year when they get
Yeah.
their new class in. So it's a shout out to my friend who loves the handle hard better speech from Kara Lawson. If you do not know what that is, you should look it up. Handle hard better. Use it for your life.
Okay.
Kara Lawson. Oh yeah,
Alright.
it's the best. So you have USC versus UConn. We have that game happening with correct 3-point lines. So yay on that. And instead of having less than 100 points, USC and UConn put up 153 points, 80-73. And Paige and Juju kind of guarded each other a little bit, which was very fun to see because you don't necessarily see that very often. And Paige throws out 28, Juju throws out 29, and it was just Paige is just more experienced, and UConn hung on despite having a little bit of foul trouble. They just were the more seasoned team. That's all I
Yeah.
can say on that one.
I agree. I mean, I think like I had said before, no one thought USC was going to be here because they were a pretty young team. They didn't have, on paper, it didn't look like they were going to be that great this year. Obviously, Juju put them on their back, as along with all the other players on the team, but Juju's the one in the spotlight. But it's UConn's a seasoned team with a seasoned coach. Paige trying to prove something this year, as she has been, but it's a hard team to beat, to a team that's a little just inexperienced, especially Juju. She's a freshman. This is the first time she's been on this stage. So come next year, we'll see what happens. But UConn just handled their business.
And it's not just experience in games played; it's in crunch time games played, because UConn has been to, like, these seniors have been to 2 Final Fours. Last year broke the streak, and you can see that they were determined to start a new streak. So good on them. Juju sets a freshman scoring record of 920 points. So we'll see on if she can catch Miss Clark in her 4 years here, because that's more points than Caitlin scored. Over, I think it's 121 more points than Caitlin scored her freshman year. Even though I know that Caitlin, I think, had less games because that was just coming back from COVID. So it's going to be interesting, because you said that you thought Caitlin's scoring record would be broken in 4 years. So Juju's on pace.
And when I said that, I was thinking about Juju, honestly.
Yeah. Well,
So,
she's got a great commercial showing Joelle Embiid a new hairstyle. So I'm happy that Juju's got her own branding and awesome commercial, and has been great for her to be there, and for LA. She stayed home and is making a name for herself. But the thing that stinks about this, I think, for us, is the fact that we had 2 pack teams in the Elite Eight. I wanted to have 2 pack teams in the Final Four. There's none. There's only 2 that made the Elite Eight, and then no one made the Final Four in the last year of the pack, considering the pack, the teams that were in were so good, and it just, they just weren't playing as good as they could. And then I think Oregon State would have had a shot in almost any other region, but they ran into the buzzsaw that was South Carolina. So, yeah. Yeah. So there's that for the pack. All right, going up to Iowa's region and talking about a pack team. Let's just do it. Aubrey, are you okay? Do we need to get you a little bit of counseling for what you witnessed with Iowa versus Colorado? Because it was not great on your side.
no,
It was great for
was
Iowa
not.
fans. They played loose and scored well after not scoring at all in Iowa. You okay?
Yeah.
You okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good. I mean, I got to go watch the game, which was amazing, but it just felt like Colorado never had control of the game at any point. It almost looked like they were just playing in reaction to what Iowa was doing, which is just never, you can't do that at this level. So Colorado just didn't have a great game, and Iowa played well, and they just handled business. Obviously, it was very hard for that to end our season, but Iowa's a good team. It's not, not to dismiss anything that Iowa's done. Obviously, Iowa is in the finals playing today, so
Yep.
it's not a bad team to lose to. Bummer for that to end Colorado, but again, what are you going to do? Iowa just outplayed us.
Well, and then in the press conference, Jalen Sherrod talked about how, people dismissed her because she was short, and then she got honorable mention All-American this year. So I can tell you that I had a blast watching her play live. And I remember one time in that first round game, I was like, how fast is she? Like, I was just kind of flabbergasted at how fast she was. And I had a really good time watching your team play, despite them beating one of the teams that I would have liked to have seen make it farther in K-State. So I had a really good time watching this year. So good luck to them next year, and I will get to see them play, because welcome to the Big 12, or welcome back to the Big 12. Yep.
Yes.
So Iowa beats Colorado, and then we have LSU and UCLA, and awesome controversy. Washington Post article drops, LA Times article drops, which we're going to talk about next week, because we're just going to talk about basketball today, but just dip in just to, nice little cliffhangers for next week. And UCLA gets back in this game, and I swear the whole game, and you wouldn't have heard it, Rebecca Lobo was trying to coach UCLA about what to do. Get into bets, get her a touch, get it back out, get it back into bets. And when they did that, they were successful, and then they stopped, and then they weren't. And that's kind of my thoughts on that. And then also, I'm trying to work on a nickname for this, but I'm just like Flage Flawless Johnson, Flage Flaw Fabulous Johnson, because Flage, whatever she had such a great NCAA tournament, and I'm so happy for her after all the controversy at the SEC tournament, 'cause she was just
Yeah.
absolutely fun to watch in that UCLA game. She was like, "I got this," and she did. It
Yeah.
was flage, flage, flage in that UCLA game.
Yeah, she put the team on her back. I mean, she had a spotlight on her, as you said, from the SEC tournament, but nothing can be dismissed about how she played in that game. She took control, and she's she's a good player.
Whew.
So you just handled business,
Well,
and it's a bummer
I
to see another Pac-12 team go down, but it is what it is. Pac-12 just
they
couldn't this year.
they started out so well and, like, ready to fight everybody UCLA did, and then they just lost it. They just
I know.
lost whatever that oomph was, and maybe that's just, like, the grind of the season, but it just didn't ever come back to kind of like they dipped, and then they just couldn't get back to the level they did in the beginning, which is unfortunate
Mhm.
because I had so much, like, hope for them. Like, this
Yeah.
year, I really liked it. I like that Betts decided to go to UCLA to make sure she didn't sit another year behind Cameron at Stanford,
Yeah.
and it was a very good decision on her part. So, I mean, I really liked that UCLA team, but, I mean, I was just sitting there just like I said, loving Flau'jae, and I love the mid-range because I think the mid-range is overlooked so much more now because Steph
Yeah.
Curry and now Caitlin with all the logo threes. Everyone should shoot threes or drive to the paint. Mid-range is great, guys. Let's have some mid-range fun. Let's hit some mid-range. Another reason why I like Paige. Paige is good in the mid-range, and
Yep.
I'd like to see that come back. So, yeah, that was yeah, Flau'jae. I just yeah. And I think when your mom calls you and says, "Man, wasn't Flau'jae good?" That just says it right there. She's like, "Yeah, Flau'jae." Yeah. Um, alright. So, LSU, Iowa. So many people wanted to see this. It was
I
so hyped
know.
up. It lived up to the hype. I said this about the Stanford Iowa State game, that they were so sportsmanlike in everything that they did, and I could just see the sportsmanship through the screen against Iowa and LSU. Multiple players helped other players for the other team up. Um,
Yeah.
it was it was a game that should not have been in the Elite Eight. I will say that. I wish there'd have been another Final Four rematch for these two.
Yeah.
But this was is one of my favorite games of the year. It was just a really good game, and I feel like it would have been one of my favorite games of the year, even if I didn't like the outcome and LSU would have won. But it was just a fun game. Caitlin was decided to let everybody know why she's Caitlin Clark. I mean,
Yes, she
there's
did.
that. That's it. Yeah. What is your take on this LSU Iowa game? I have so many more takes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this game was hyped up, obviously, from last year, and I think everyone wanted this to happen. And I mean, it hit 9.9 million people watching this game, and then it just showed that people were watching women's basketball and paying attention to this game. Clark just had herself a game. She was unstoppable in this game. I, I mean, she hit 9 3-pointers, which is insane. 9 3-pointers. That's actually crazy.
That's nothing.
I don't know.
That's nothing. That's nothing. That's just, I mean, 27 points is just so easy. You know,
It's super
making 9
easy.
shots. So easy.
Yeah,
Uh,
so
how many
easy.
million did you say were watching this game?
Yeah, I mean, last year's championship, Iowa versus LSU, got 9.9 million views. So about 10 million people watching this game. This year, in this game, there was 12.3 million people watching. And this wasn't even the finals game. So I can't imagine how many people are going to be watching this year's finals. But just the
It's
increase in viewership and how many people were anticipating this game is crazy.
well, and then you put it up on Monday night in prime time. You know,
Hmm.
that's just going to increase even more because um and this is what people want to see. And is it stinks though that they're just pitting Caitlin versus Angel against each other. Because that's not what it was. It's still Iowa
Hmm.
and LSU. And those are
Yeah.
things, and I know, but it's also good to have stars going against each other because that just makes it, like, fun. Like, I'm gonna bring it back to the 90s and say, like, Jordan versus Magic. like in Jordan's first finals. And so when you have these personalities and great players going against each other, it makes for ratings, but their teams have been doing it. And again, I'm just going to say that Flage was good. But I mean, the key to this game, in my opinion, and a couple other people's opinions, is the defensive strategy of LSU to have their shortest, and no offense, she's way faster than me, probably slowest player guarding
Mhm.
Caitlin Clark. She gives up 5 inches. Haley Van Lith gives up 5 inches to Caitlin Clark, is not as fast. I just don't understand why that is the play when you have other people that are more athletic than Haley Van Lith to be on Caitlin Clark, especially since Caitlin Clark, beat Iowa beat the Haley Van Lith team last year against Louisville, where Caitlin
Yeah.
also I believe, had 40 points in that Elite Eight game. So I just don't see why that was a thought for coaches that have won several national championships, as in Kim and her staff. How was that
I don't
strategy?
I don't know. Especially Caitlin, who obviously loves to shoot 3-pointers. One of the biggest
Yeah.
obviously she's gonna get shots off. She's gonna make contested shots. But at least if you have someone who has a little bit of the same height, so that the shot is actually contested at the ball, not below the ball, is I don't know. But I mean, Kim, this was the game plan, and this is the outcome of the game. Caitlin had 9 3-pointers and 40 something points.
41. Just
Yep,
doing
41
it.
points.
You know,
41 points and
and
93
Chuck,
points.
it's yeah, that's just where I'm just and Stolke got in foul trouble, and then she wasn't in that much. That was another thing that I was just surprised. LSU pounded in
Yeah.
more. You had their strongest post player was out a decent amount, and then just didn't attack it. But
Mhm.
also, I kind of think that Kate Martin has upped her stock for the WNBA because she had a very, very good game here and had 21 points. And Kate Martin is a guard playing in the post and is an excellent rebounder. So I want to know where she would fit in with the W team because she's not super fast, but she is someone that is adaptable to all of her situations. And I think this game was something that was really good for her. And then also, a falter is not scared of the moment right now and is coming in and scoring. And I had
Yeah.
said that Gabby Marshall needs to score for Iowa to be successful. I am dead wrong because Gabby Marshall has hardly scored anything. But a falter's like, I got you, girl. You just play defense. I'm like, is that the conversation in their locker room? Gabby, play defense.
Yeah, I mean, you know your role, you play what you can, and obviously it's been working. If they need her to play defense, be a lockdown defender, then that's what she's doing. That's the role she's taking. It's kind of cool to actually see players because I feel like in this day and age, everyone just wants to be in the spotlight. Everyone wants to score as many points as they can. But when you have a player on your team that knows their role and is willing to do their role to the fullest and understands maybe I won't score any points, and that's fine with me as long as I get stops because that's my role on this team. That's the cool thing about basketball and playing team sports is when people know their role and do that to the fullest without having any ill against, scoring points or, oh, this person scored more points than me. Because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's a team, right? You got to do what you got to do to win the game. And that's what she's doing, which is awesome to see.
Well, and it's also good because a falter is taller than Marshall, so she's able to get layups and run on fast breaks and do things because
Mhm.
Gabby's just going to stay out of the 3-point line. So that's another thing that's very aggressive because she's running the floor really well. So it's interesting
Yeah.
how everything is shifted for Iowa. All right, so now we're going to lead into the Final Four. This is going to stick with Iowa and UConn. It's built as Caitlin versus Paige. They played their freshman year in a Sweet 16. Paige and UConn easily won. They were the way better team at that point. And Paige was like a player of the year, I think AP player of the year. And Caitlin was scoring. Don't even think she
Mhm.
made All American that year, which was just, I'm trying to think if that's true or not. And well, go look it up on your own. But Paige, they won that one. So this was built as something these two had known each other for years, growing up in Minnesota and Iowa. The Chiefs posted a picture of Caitlin on their social media wearing a Chiefs shirt saying, hey, good luck pretty much. And then the Vikings from Minnesota did the same thing with Paige because Paige had a Vikings jersey on. So way to go, men, for getting
Yep.
behind this big game that averaged over 14 million viewers and peaked at 17 million. And Iowa
Yep.
just outlast them. And I mean, gets down by 12 early and then just comes back through a lot of grit and a lot of playing, despite the fact that Nika Mule locked up Caitlin for a good amount of the game, and Gabby Marshall was trying to lock up Paige. But oh my gosh, this is another good game that we deserve games like this, and they deserve the
Yep.
hype, and they deserve all the people watching. I can tell you what they didn't deserve, but I'm going to get to that in a second. But this is what we have said has been good for years, and it is continually proven. The product is continually proving us right about how good it is. And I'm still kind of like upset that people are like coming to the party and saying like, "Yeah, this is good. It's been good, people. It's been
I know.
good. This
Yeah.
is just it's really good." So now you're just paying attention to it. So Iowa pulls
It's
out the
been
win against UConn. Yeah,
it's
go
again,
go
it's
for it.
been great. People are just weren't paying attention before. Yeah. I mean, this was a game down to the wire. This was a great game. Obviously, we all know there was a call at the end of the game that people won't stop talking about, that people think that changed the outcome of the game. But in reality, it's not one play that wins a basketball game. It never is one play. That's just the one play that people remember because it's the last play of the game. But not one play made it so UConn lost this game. And Iowa just played. I don't even know because UConn was playing a good game too. This was a battle towards the end, but Iowa just had plays at the end that made them score more at the end of the game when that buzzer rang. That's the truth of it.
Well, Stolke had herself a game, was the leading scorer for Iowa on 9 of
Yeah.
12 shooting and 23 points. Way to go, Stolke. Girl, sometimes she steps up in moments after not playing much in that LSU game. Good job, girl. I like
Yeah.
her. She's so fast. She's so fast. She's very athletic. I think she's more intelligent than people give her credit for because she finds the angles very well of getting herself open to the passes that lead to the points. She knows what to do, and that is not just her having speed, that is intelligence about finding the lanes to get her open. But here's questions. I had a very long text conversation with a friend of mine, so shout out to Tyler. Him and I had a very good conversation, and he asked me about, do like refs decide the game at the end? And I went back to a very controversial call. Or not a controversial call. It was the right call, but it happened with 0.2 seconds left against Baylor and Tennessee in 2004. And I was right there for it. And a very good softball coach who was married to a former WNBA coach said if it's a call, he said the first second of the game, it should be a call in the last second of the game. And I kind of changed that quote to if it's a call in any seconds of the game, it should be a call in the last second of the game. And when people get mad at that, it's because there's a history of letting the players decide the game. That's not the point of officiating because players decide the game with their actions, not just playing. And this is another one to look up for people. At the end of a national semifinal against Mississippi State in Louisville in 2018, Mississippi State ties it up at 3. Louisville gets the ball in bounds, goes the length of the court, and I think Tiara McCowan fouled. I don't even remember who was going in for the layup, and then they did not call it, and they went to overtime. Mississippi State wins in overtime and then loses on Enrique's 3-pointer in the national championship game. Louisville could have, should have had free throws, and obviously they had played Notre Dame that year because I believe they're both in the ACC. Could have won a national championship, and so that call wasn't made. And I feel like it's wrong that call wasn't made. So how can we get mad at calls that are made when we just get just as mad at calls that were made? These are questions, and I am, like I said, I've officiated, I've played, I know both sides of this. What are your thoughts as a player about people swallowing the whistle at the end of the game, and then things could just kind of not get called or get called that you don't think should have been called?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to like what you had said, and I think what Gino had said in the press conference after the game too, is if it's a play that you're calling, if it's a play that you're calling all game, then yes, of course, call it at the end. If it's a foul, it's a foul. It doesn't matter how much time is on the clock. If you foul, if you travel, it doesn't matter. But it's when there's discrepancies in what they're calling, and then now it's the end of the game. So now you're calling a call that you weren't calling in the third quarter with 5 minutes left in that quarter, So that's the problem. As a player for UConn, it would be extremely frustrating to see that you had a chance to win this game and it is blown because there was a foul call. But at the end of the day, I think that it was a foul. The whistle was blown. It was called a foul, and Iowa won the game. Again, it wasn't that play that made Iowa win that game. That was just the last thing everyone remembers. It's
Yep.
frustrating because you never want to see a game almost be, again, it wasn't decided, but that's what it looks like. A game be decided by a ref. But it was a foul. And in those moments, you just got to be careful because, again, they're looking for anything to call. So I don't know. I mean, it's a tough call to make. It's tough when you're on the team, especially UConn. I know that it's definitely not easy to have your season end in that manner, but I don't think the refs made a bad decision. I really
I
don't.
don't I don't either. Um and then on that, because Gabby Marshall's the one that got picked, Stolke already had come out and hedged on Paige when Paige caught the ball. So you had someone
Yeah.
taller than Paige on that, and I don't know if anyone would have dropped to Edwards or if Paige could have gotten her the ball, but it looked like they were trying to hit an outside shot and they didn't need it. So I also kind of wonder about that. Like if
Yeah.
Paige would have dribbled in and tried to get a three, but Stolke was right there on her. And like I said, I don't know on who would have been able to shift to get Edwards if she would have rolled. But the one thing that is very troubling to me is that Gabby Marshall had to, um, like, you know, take down her social media accounts because she got a bunch of hate comments. All she did was play hard and try to go, around a screen. And
Yeah.
she didn't like oversell or anything. She's smaller and she went and, got like a nudge and did what she always does. She doesn't overact or anything. And right when the whistle blew, she knew and just celebrated because she knew the call was for them. So that's the thing that I think is we need to calm down about. Um and then yeah, that's where we need to calm down. Gabby Marshall didn't do anything. So
No.
it's not her problem. Yeah. She just played the game and played very good defense like she's been doing. So there's
Yeah.
that. And then Caitlin threw the ball off Paige's butt on the other side, which I literally, when I saw it happen, I'm like, throw it off her butt. I knew, and then when she
Yeah.
did it, I was like, Ryan Rucker's like, what a brilliant play. I was like, that's not brilliant. Paige turned her back all the way. I was like, that's
I
what you
know.
should do. Waste more
Yeah.
time. Yeah. There's, yeah. It's unfortunate that people think that's what it came down to. It's
Yeah.
not unfortunate that a call was made. It's just unfortunate that's it. And I also think it is unfortunate because Aaliyah Edwards, it's going to be your last game, and that's going to kind of be like the last thing that stays in your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot, but another great game. It was everything that I think we wanted, except for people's reactions to the end of it. Right, so
Yeah.
we're stayed on that side. We're gonna go to the other side, and we're just gonna. Oh gosh, South Carolina, just you're just so mean. Sometimes it's just so mean. That third quarter was so mean. And
Yeah.
I was impressed with NC State because they did not really necessarily play a good first half of as good because they had some turnovers and Snia Rivers wasn't hitting. So I was like, oh, they're in this. They haven't
Mhm.
played their best. And South Carolina's like, neither have we. And that's how the third quarter happened.
Yeah, like I had said a little earlier, it's that third quarter can be the deciding factor of the game. And at halftime, everyone was hyped. This maybe will be the time that South Carolina could lose, or it just will be a good Final Four game. And it just wasn't really that. That third quarter was hard to watch. NC State just did not have an answer for South Carolina, and South Carolina once again proved why they are undefeated.
29-6. 29
Yeah.
to 6. Almost 5 times as much as NC State scored. Almost.
Mhm.
It's 29-6. Ashlyn Watkins had 20 rebounds. Cardoso was 10 of 12 from the floor. Oh my gosh. I am just like Cardoso was like, I haven't really scored as much as I could. I'm gonna do it this game. I mean, it's
Yep.
so many things. Isaiah James was the only one scoring for NC State that first half. NC State's better than that, but South Carolina, oh gosh, that third quarter, it's just, 29-6. That's all I can say. Yeah, so there's South Carolina, 37-0, just chilling with that goose egg as the losses. All right, so we're literally right now less than 2 hours away from where is it? 2.5 hours away? 2.5 hours away from
No, an hour and a half.
hour and a half away. My computer clock is off, and I'm trying to I'm just like, I can't do math. It's like, 2:00, and then I was thinking that you're on Eastern time. I was like, no, it's 3:00. No, that's her time. 2:00 for me, 3:00 Eastern.
Yes.
Who's gonna win this game? Who's gonna win the national championship? Can Iowa beat them 2 years in a row and give them their only loss? Or is it South Carolina, South Carolina, South Carolina?
I'm gonna go. I don't know. I have a feeling. I'm not gonna say what I think is gonna happen. I'm just gonna say what I hope happens. And
You're gonna have to.
Iowa wins.
You're gonna say what you hope happens. All right. So what you think's gonna happen? Are you gonna write that down and then put it in an envelope and then you can share with everybody after it happens?
Yes.
I think South Carolina is gonna win. I'm just gonna say it. I've picked them this whole time. I don't think anything's gonna happen to stop them. Iowa last year got out rebounded by 24.
Yeah.
And they still won. So I mean, that's not something that needs to really happen, even though they are rebounding well right now. What is Stolke gonna do against Cardoso, and what is Stolke gonna do against Watkins? I think that Iowa needs to run so many ball screens with Stolke to get Cardoso out of the lane, and then their other guards need to try to go backdoor. South Carolina is still gonna be faster than them, but get Cardoso out of the lane, and then when Watkins subs in for Cardoso and she guards Stolke, then you're in trouble because she's so much faster than Cardoso. I want to see if Dawn's going to put Watkins and Cardoso in at the same time. Then Iowa, I think, would be toast because what are you going to do against that? Watkins can jump out of the building. Cardoso's taller than the building. What can Iowa do? Is Caitlin going to make 10 threes? Who knows? This is interesting, but I'm still going with South Carolina as national champions. That's my pick.
All right.
Well, so here's a question.
I'm going with Iowa, so we're going opposites.
We're gonna split this. Now, here's a question that a lot of people have been bringing up. Caitlin Clark she's gonna be less than 20 rebounds away, and after this game, I think she needs 17 rebounds to get 1,000 rebounds for her career. I don't think she's gonna get 17 rebounds to make 1,000. So Sabrina will be the only one that will have 1,000 rebounds and 1,000 assists in her career, unless something insane happens, like double overtime, which wouldn't that be the best? So she's going to have over 1,100 assists. She has over 3,900 points. She's close to having, 1,000 rebounds in her career. Does she need the title? This is the question. Does she need the title to be considered the GOAT of women's college basketball? And I've got totally different perspectives on this. What do you say?
I don't think so. I think she is the GOAT of college women's basketball based off of maybe Sabrina might have more rebounds than her, but look at what has happened to women's basketball since she has been playing. And it's not just her. Obviously, it's everyone who has come before her, everyone who is still playing. It's not just Caitlin Clark. But if you look at the viewership, if you look at people just paying attention, more deals that are happening for women's players, a lot of that can be stemmed from Caitlin Clark. I think she's proven that she's a good player across the stat board. But if you look at it on a deeper level, not just of what's happening on the actual basketball court, but you see what's happening across America, you can see that Caitlin is the GOAT, and I don't think anyone can argue against that.
I think the argument is for the championship, and that came from Stewie, who went to a powerhouse. And, I know she won 4. And the first one, I feel like, was lucky because Baylor lost to Louisville. And then they played Notre Dame for the 4th time that year. Notre Dame beat them 3 times. And it's not like saying UConn wasn't great. They were going to be in the Final Four. But I don't think UConn was the best team that year. But sometimes the best team doesn't win. And then Monica McNutt had a very good thought on this. Is the parity has increased so much in women's college basketball. The past 5 champions have been different teams: Notre Dame, Baylor, Stanford, South Carolina, LSU. That hasn't
Mhm.
happened since the 90s, where we've had 5 different teams in 5 consecutive years. And if South Carolina wins it today, then, that kind of changes because they won one 2 years ago. But
Yeah.
when Stewie was there, when Tarazi was there, even the Tennessee greats, there wasn't as much parity. And so the fact that you don't have all the best teams going to all, 5 schools changes everything. And also
Yeah.
the fact that Caitlin Clark has not played with an All-American, multiple All-Americans, also changes things. And I know that South Carolina this year is so evened out in their core, but
Mhm.
they weren't like that last year.
Yeah.
They weren't like that last year. Um, LSU last year had Angel, but they've had so many future All-Americans. I think Flage is going to be an All-American. And so you're playing with potential future All-Americans. There's nobody on Iowa's team that was an All-American when she was younger. There's not anybody, I don't think, that's going to be an All-American when she's later. And the fact that they are in 2 consecutive national title games, even if they don't win, is enough to say yes, that she is definitely considered that. I don't think she needs a title to win it. And
I agree.
those are the things that need to come into account, because it's not just one thing. And you could talk about powerhouses, but the parity has increased in all of the across the board for all of the conferences, even though we
Yeah.
talk about Power 5 all the time,
Mhm.
but it's so much more spread out, and she's made the game accessible to everybody. And the fact that even the greatest players before her did not have sellouts or a minimum of $300 to get in a game to see them just says something all on its own. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I don't think she needs a title. I just don't. It doesn't mean that there's always going to be arguments here and there, because, uh, but she doesn't need a title. The game has changed. She's the catalyst for the change. So
Yes.
thanks for these 4 years, Caitlin Clark.
I know.
Also, thanks for these 4 years, Don Staley. We could go back to when they lost to Stanford 4 years ago in that Final Four, and that was an excellent South Carolina team. Thanks for these
Yeah.
4 years. Thanks for the comeback, Paige Beckers. Thanks for making everything interesting, Angel Reese. Thanks for NC State making it to a Final Four after 26 years. Like, there's so
Yeah.
many things. Just a whole lot of thanks for everybody. But
Yeah.
yeah, she doesn't need it. Right.
I don't
So
think she needs
I'm
it.
picking South Carolina. Aubrey's picking
Yeah.
Iowa. We will
Picking
be
Iowa.
back later this week to discuss all what? You just gonna say Iowa again?
I said Iowa, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're picking Iowa. Yeah, there you go. This is gonna be fun. I hope everybody enjoys the game. Let's break some more records in viewership, because hey, guess what? Women are worth it. And if you haven't figured that out, you just stupid. Um, there's nothing better than that, just to say. You're just stupid.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
and if you're
agree.
listening to this podcast, you're definitely not stupid. So good on you. Uh, Good on you. Enjoy the game today. And for Across the Pond Women's College Basketball, I'm Stacia Whitaker.
And I'm Aubrey Knight.
All right. Have a good day, everyone. See you next week.
Bye. Thank you.